How's it going, guys? My name is Graham and welcome to Reventure, a funny little RPG platforming game where you can discover 100 different endings. I did a live stream of it on the channel, we had a ton of fun with it. I found about a third of the endings there, but it seems like it's going to take quite a bit of effort to actually locate all of the specific endings, and I thought it would be more convenient for people if it was more of a walkthrough, rather than me just kind of like guessing, checking, trial and error. This was originally just going to be one video with all 100 endings. It's taking longer than I thought. It's hard to find all the endings, plus somehow with only a quarter of the endings, it's still a half-hour long video. So yeah, I thought I would release them in batches. So rather than wasting any more time, let's start looking at the first 25 endings of Reventure. Everything started as a pretty normal day in Tim's life. You start out by first just leaving through the front door. Good morning, Tim. The king's waiting for you inside. The Dark Lord has taken the princess to his fortress to the east. Grab the legendary sword to the west and fulfill your destiny, Tim. Please, Tim, hurry and bring my daughter back. Take this item to protect you on your journey. And just above him here, you can grab the shield. Off to the west, there is a mountain that you can hop your way up across. And we find the Elder sitting and waiting. It's dangerous to go alone. This game is going to have Zelda references aplenty, so in addition to the very obvious one going on here, you'll notice the music in the background is probably about as close as you could possibly get to the actual Zelda music without infringing on any copyrights. Sword of Legend. Light as the wind in the hands of a worthy hero. Let the weight of justice fall on the forces of evil. Something quick I do want to show off here. You're just tall enough originally that you're just barely hitting your head on the wall there. You grab the Sword of Legend. Now you can see that you come shy of it. Each additional weapon is actually slowly weighing you down, affecting your ability to jump around in the map. You'll learn quickly that there's trade-offs. You need certain weapons and items to access specific areas, but if you pick up too many items along the way, then you'll lose the ability to jump and you won't be able to access the area at all. Something to keep in mind that you're going to need very specific item combos to get the full 100 achievements. You can't just go grab every item all the time. And the first and simplest ending you can get in this game: shove your sword straight into the chest of the Elder themselves. Tim was so eager to try his new sword, he couldn't wait for some minion to appear and stabbed the Elder at the other end of the cave. He also stole his wallet. What a moron. It's dangerous to be near Tim. Ending 1 of 100. The character of Tim in his green tunic with his little elf cap, the sword and the shield, the Elder, the dangerous to go alone, it's dangerous to be near Tim. Very overt references to The Legend of Zelda. Even the music that you're hearing on the mountain is about as close to a Legend of Zelda track as you can possibly get while still being copyright friendly. You get to see your different ending hang up in the wall of endings there, and then a specific amount of time will pass. 4 years later. Tim spent a long time in prison for that murder. After being released back into the streets, he considered changing his name in the options menu to improve his personal brand. Now, you'll notice as I'm playing through this, I'm not going to be unlocking everything 100% chronologically, so that time where it's year 5, day 5 will be changing quite a bit. It's going to be jumping all over the place. That is directly being affected by that year value that we see on the screen after completing an ending. You can actually pull up the options menu and go into extra. You can totally change your name. While I'm at it, I'm going to increase the text speed. I'm going to leave the name as is because it actually starts changing on its own as you progress through the game, so I'm going to leave that for now. Throughout the game, after very specific endings, you'll carry on the story as different characters, the first of which is Tinku. This happened to be who I was playing as during ending 2. You're going to notice this as a recurring trend throughout this video. I'll be playing through different sections of the game as a character that you may have not seen me actually unlock yet. So my apologies that it bounces around in that way. I'm not methodical enough to do every one of these in the exact right order, and also I am still discovering like 2/3 of them myself while I'm making this video, so I wouldn't even be able to do that. So there's a lot of guesswork going into the actual ordering. You'll see how to get Tinku very shortly. As you run to go on your adventure, Tinku trips on the rock immediately outside of his house, like the rookie that he is. That day, Tinku tripped over a rock right after leaving his house and fell right on his face. The guard in front really questioned if this was indeed the hero the kingdom needed. Shit happens. Ending number 2. That same day, one of the few times time does not actually pass. Such a stupid fall. Tinku's face looked flatter than before, and that's really saying something given how pixelated it already is. He'll watch his step next time he goes outside. When you actually make it beyond the rock, you'll notice characters will directly refer to Tinku instead of Tim. Tinku, of course, being this game's version of Tingle from the Zelda series. Other than calling you by name, not a lot changes. Here's the first time we'll start to notice that the world is changing over time. Now it's been a few years in the game's time. When we climb up this mountain, we'll notice that on this cliff outcrop, there's actually something on the edge here. As we progress through the game, you'll start to notice more and more that small, minor things like this are changing in the world as time progresses. There's nothing we can do with that now, but it will become relevant later. Because people will be curious, as a very specific example, once you're playing as a different character, if you repeat an ending, it is not actually different. For example, killing the Elder as Tinku is no different than killing them as Tim. Time does not pass, and it's played off as a memory instead. Tinku remembered that moment as the best in his life. Times were good back then. If you just hop right out your window here and run straight into the minion directly outside the house, you just wait it out, wait for him to get enough hits off on you. Tim expected those little minions to be harmless, or at least to take only one heart of his life. Guess what? That's exactly what they took. Tim's weak and little heart. Please nerf this. Ending number 3, 4 days later. Everyone in town knew Tim was a heartless bastard, so the wound wasn't that bad for him. But maybe carrying a shield next time wasn't a bad idea after all. The next day, if you go out your window, you'll even notice that this minion is no longer around. He's gone for the rest of the game. Here's a specific example of how that weight burden starts to matter. When you climb down here, you're no longer nimble enough to hop your way back out. But luckily, there are plenty of these hidden areas across the game. Here, in the Caves of Legend, you can get the shovel. Now, for buttons in the game, you have A to jump and X to interact. When you're standing on an area that can be dug, if you hit X, you'll use the shovel. If there's nowhere to dig and you have the sword, you'll use the sword. The game always looks at the item you currently need and will use that. Because I'm sure someone will be curious about this locker, it's built for Twitch integration, so it's not actually something I'll be showing off in the video. Now that we've fetched the sword, dug our way out, we can run back out in front of Tim's house and stab the guard. There's a lot of these endings that are just about killing the various people in the world. Tim removed the legendary sword from the stone just to put it inside a friendly guard. He was arrested and publicly executed under the charges of being an asshole. Public enemy, ending number 4. 6 days later. Tim was a psycho and got what he deserved. The day after his execution, his brother decided to pick up where he left off and fulfilled the prophecy. Now we get to play as Tinku! Entering the castle, there is another guard. If you stab this guard, it is the same ending as before. Just a note that murdering any and all guards will always give you public enemy, ending 4. The flavor text for repeated endings tends to change up a little bit. Tinku Jr. didn't know why, but he got aroused every time he remembered that adventure. We'll start finding notes like this hidden around the world. When you interact with them, you pick them up, and it will actually grant you a hint. When viewing the hint, it'll lead you towards one of the endings. I don't have ending number 5 yet. Trial by combat is the only hint that I have. Something that's probably already crossed your sick minds is immediately going and stabbing this overly trusting king that lets you walk 2 inches away from him. All hail King Tinku Jr. As the previous ruler finished his term, the kingdom entered an era of prosperity. Quite brief, because Tinku Jr.'s idea quickly became popular. Medieval times, ending number 5. 2 years later. Tinku Jr., the Brief, recovered from the injuries of the murder attempt. To spare his life, he swore loyalty to the new king, much to his humiliation. Once you have served as king and been replaced, your portrait is added to the wall next to the king's throne. Here in this particular screen, you can actually see the hint appear, showing you all the endings you've found and indicating ones that you have hints towards. Eventually a much easier to access sword appears in your house. With the shovel in hand, we can dig through the Caves of Legend down further into the abandoned bridge. You can allow yourself to fall straight down and you'll land near Magma Lake. And of course the obvious thing to do is chuck yourself straight into the magma. A miscalculated jump resulted in Tinku falling into a lava pit. This was not the end he'd have wanted, but was surely the one he deserved. Toasted! Ending number 6. 4 months later. Pretty speedy recovery for falling into magma. Those third-degree burns left Tinku with a scarred face. Surely the princess would look past them. Go get her, you hero! And now we get to play as a burnt-up character. Regardless of if you fall into the magma as Tim or Tinku, this burnt-up character will look the same. But the characters on screen will refer to me as Tinku as a carryover of that being my most recent character. As this drawbridge is being lowered, you have a very short window of time where you can actually jump around and under it. Now moving through the underground, this entire bush will fade away. We are warned, caution, piranhas. And when you jump into the water, maybe Tinku couldn't read the sign. Maybe he didn't know what a piranha was. Maybe he was just an idiot. What he surely was, piranha food. Go swimming, ending number 7. 2 weeks later. The guard found Tinku's body next to the lake and moved it home. His lucky hat was lost somewhere though, so now everyone would realize his outstanding baldness. After which time we will run around as Bald Tinku. After which time we will run around as the hatless bald character. If we actually return to the Piranha Lake, we can see our poor little hat floating out in the water. We start by chopping our way through the farmlands. As we're making our way through the mountain base, be sure to stop down here and grab yourself some bombs. If we bomb our way through the mountain base, this grants us access to the mossy cave. Ignore the chest for now, that is a much later ending. We can hack our way through the bushes and make our way down to the flooded caves. You may jump down into the water, you can swim in either direction. Off to the left, it connects with the cistern. If we instead ride the caves down to the edge, we access the waterfalls. Following the soothing water of the waterfalls, the fall into multiple rocks was painful. But Tinku was okay, and ready to get back into the adventure. Wait, no he wasn't. Rock and roll, ending number 8. 3 weeks later. The Elder found Tinku's dead body and put it together with a spell. Tinku is a zombie now, with an insatiable hunger for adventure, now allowing us to play as the zombie. Climbing down over the mountain, across to the West Valley, we now have the shop. I'm totally 100% out of stock. Sorry, no stuff for you, and of course I don't believe him, and so the only true punishment is to stab him. It's a very reasonable response overall. Being a shopkeeper is tough. Low wages, long hours, mean customers, and also the occasional serial killer that comes into your shop, stabs you, and steals all your stuff. Customer is always right. Ending number 9. 5 months later. Chuck's business with stolen merchandise wasn't working out the way he had thought. So, he woke up ready to look for an adventurous alternative. Now when you return, get out of my shop, you bastard! Make a false move and I'll use this thing. Which, I doubt he ever will. He's the real chicken. Up above his shop, this cannon is aimed at the Dark Fortress for express delivery. Please don't touch it. If you climb on aboard, it will blast you out across through the stratosphere, across almost the entire game, down near the Dark Bridge. Carrying on past the shop, we have the Quiet Hill. Up through the hill is a small hidden area where we find Juan, one of the creators of this world. I'm here just enjoying the views. And of course, you can stab Juan. Palette 8, palette unlocked. Killing the developers isn't actually an ending. It unlocks extra secrets, like being able to swap the palette to a 8-bit one. The entire world will actually change to fit this new palette. It's pretty damn cool. Within the area of the abandoned bridge, we can sneak off to the side here and continually dig our way down past the magma lake into the chasm. Digging down further past the chasm arrives us at the bone pit. Attention, do not dig here. You've been warned. And so obviously you're going to want to dig here quite repeatedly. Further and further. We're not quite there yet. We could dig deeper. Just a little more. Magnificent pixels. This is the game zooming in, by the way, not me. Tinku closed his eyes and remembered that treacherous signpost as he fell into the bottomless pit. Ironically, since there was no bottom or impact, he just starved to death. Endless fall. Ending 10. That same day, nightmares about endless falls were pretty common in Tinku's family. Tinku woke up when he heard the guard outside. Eventually, your unburdened jump will be high enough that you can make it up onto this ridge, opening up a whole new slew of possibilities as you go up through the trap door. If you climb over the castle to the other side, you can go in through the door into the princess's room. There's a cute little cat here, a mirror, and a chest that contains Mr. Hugs. Mr. Hugs unlocks the hidden power of love, but forbids the use of violence. You can immediately go over and hug the adorable little cat within the room. I think we're giving him a hug. I hope we're giving him a hug. Right after adopting Pavlov, Chuck kept filling his heart with the love of missing cats. Unfortunately, he also filled his throat with hairballs, and unfortunately, choked to death in his bed. Feline Company, ending 11. 6 days later. Every cat in the kingdom cried for the loss of Chuck. Pavlov swore to take over his will and prepared for a new adventure. At which time you get to play as Pavlov, the happy, adorable little kitten. Returning back above the castle, there's now going to be little kitty friends that roam around all over its ramparts. Now, you might be curious about how far Mr. Hugs goes. It's the same as the sword. We can start hugging literally everyone and everything. Climbing down into the well shaft and opening up the cistern. If we climb up above to this particular chest, we will find the fishing rod. If we go out onto the dock, you immediately get the ending. After picking up that fishing rod, Tinku felt the urge to go fishing. The minutes turned into hours, the hours into years, and the years into a dead princess who was never rescued. Go fishing. Ending number 12. That same day, Tinku remembered the fishing days with his dad every time he had piranha for dinner. No time for melancholy, let's go find an adventure. And we actually get our hat back. Upon returning to Fisherman's Lake, we will find our dead skeleton still sitting here fishing away the time. If anyone was curious, yes, you can chop signs apart. Hilariously, you'll actually see chunks of the signs remaining. Caution, piranhas. First acquiring Mr. Hugs, we can then share our love with one of the minions. Those shiny eyes, those tiny feet, these minions were too cute for Pavlov to resist. Unfortunately, they severely damaged him on contact, so it wasn't the best idea to give one a hug. Allergic to Cuteness, ending 13. 3 weeks later. Pavlov spent weeks in bed recovering from the brutal allergy reaction, but those minions were so cute, it was totally worth it. Digging down through the abandoned bridge, past Magma Lake, past the chasm, into the bone pit, ignoring the attention do not dig sign, across the bridge into the dragon's lair, we now confront the dragon head on with our mighty sword. Stepping in front of the dragon wasn't the smartest decision in Tinku's career, but it'd probably be the last he'd ever make. His cooking point was the dragon's favorite. Well done! Ending number 14. 4 months later. The scars all over Tinku's skin made our hero look even more adventurous than before. As with multiple other endings, we now carry on as the burnt-up adventurer. Moving left to right past the waterfall, through the flooded cave, brings us to the dark cliffs. Beyond this we have the dark bridge, Swimming across the bottom of the dark bridge takes us to the dark moat, which then leads to the pit, which we are then sealed within. You can then take this little elevator up to the top. When you move across this button, it will drop the floor out from under you into an area that is continually spawning minions. With our current jump capabilities, we are unable to jump our way out. We can choose to try to fight our way out, but that won't grant us an ending. Dying will. They're not that weak when they come all at once, right? Tinku was outnumbered, defeated, and finally used as a playing ball. Family gathering, ending number 15. 8 months later. After being tortured for months, Tinku escaped back to home, but the sequels were hard on him. We now get to play as a little minion. Jumping out across the magma lake, through this hidden wall, past the pillar, into the dragon lair ventilation system. Upon entering the dragon's lair, you can sneak your way in back behind the dragon and give it a quick stab in the back. Relatively easy to defeat overall. Tinku slew the dragon and claimed its legendary treasure, but since he couldn't find the way back up to the surface, he now rests in the bone pit like all the others before him. Monster Hunter, ending number 16. The title of this ending being a rather on-the-nose reference to Monster Hunter. 8 years later. Uncle Tinku's fortune could never be found, but his legendary sword was kept at his house as a memory of his feat. Tinku Jr., wanting to follow his uncle, embarks on a new quest. And if at this point you had been playing as Tim, it would be Tim Jr. The character themselves does actually look more like Tim than it does Tinku. Tinku is just a carryover of who I was playing as in the last ending. I believe this character comes around after a specific amount of time has passed. You can now access your sword directly inside of your room, and the sword will no longer be found up on the mountain. You can cut out this chunk of leaves to hop up onto this platform in the mountain base, or climbing down into the side of this little hill and killing the minion within, you can acquire the Hook Claw, a obvious reference to the hook shot from The Legend of Zelda. You can chain together hook claw shots to climb up the side here. From there we access the Ascension. We're aiming this cannon to the west in case the dragon decides to strike again, but we're out of ammo. When we go and investigate the cannon ourselves, we climb on inside, and the cannon exploded violently, sending Tinku right into a rock. Using cannons was indeed a fast way to move around, but not the safest one. A 95% uptime guaranteed policy is not enough sometimes. Public transport, ending number 17. 2 years later. Tinku received millions from the cannon company, but spent all of it on medical care and cosmetic surgery. Remember Tinku, those cannons have a 5% fail chance. After the cosmetic surgery, we then wake up as this gorgeous creature, with their hair flowing in the wind as we jump around. With the Mr. Hugs ability, we can run in and give our lovable king a big old hug. Pavlov jumped into the arms of the king and gave him an epic kiss. Everyone in the room felt awkward and unsure of what to do. They slowly started to walk away to give the monarch some privacy. King of Hearts, ending 18. 6 days later. Pavlov was now the queen of the realm, but that didn't mean he could abandon his good old hero job. I mean, even if we are the step queen, we should probably still save the princess. Whatever name you were most recently playing as will now have Queen in front of it, and we get to play as this Queen sprite. After which time we will now have the Queen portrait above the King. Guards need love too. Pavlov jumped to the arms of the guard, but landed on the spear he was wielding. The guard didn't move an inch, as Pavlov's heart was impaled. How professional! Broken heart, ending 19. 4 months later. Having such powerful jumping skills can get troublesome sometimes. Pavlov readjusted his effusiveness and got ready for adventure once again. After which, we do return back to the original Tim sprite, now with a giant spear sticking through our chest. Yeah, so thanks for that, guys. You can simply climb back into bed. After waiting it out for about 10 seconds, Some days you just don't feel like it. The day Tim stayed in bed, the kingdom GDP went up by 200%, the Dark Lord retired out of boredom, and the cure for all diseases was found. Well done, Tim. Vacation, ending 22 days later. Okay, that was a good nap. How long were you asleep, Tim? Never mind, it's time to get up and find some adventure. After going through the mountain base and into the mossy cave, if you go up instead of down, it'll take you to the Great Waterfall. Triggering the lever in the Great Waterfall, pulling out the bridge, waterfall passage, past the wall, dark cliff, down through the dark bridge, over to the dark moat, again into the pit. This time instead, we will chuck ourselves onto the spikes. It was quite a feat to be pierced simultaneously by 18 spikes. Little Minion felt pain in every inch of his body, but kept an optimistic smile because he had fulfilled some bizarre achievement. You nailed it. Ending 21. 2 weeks later. Who would have thought that having 18 holes in the body could be non-fatal? Somehow, Little Minion was back in town and ready to give his adventure another shot. We now play as a version of the character pierced repeatedly with sharp, pointy objects. If we climb our way up through the dark bridge, maintenance personnel only. Pushing this button will lower this large bridge. Maintenance personnel only again. This button will activate the small little elevator here. Off to the east, we have the Dark Hall. Please don't try to rescue the princess while I'm away. The Dark Lord. Activating the Dark Elevator, rising us all the way up to the top, will bring us to the Tower Bridge. You got the 1-ton anvil, which immediately then drops us down through the many layers of bridges. Pavlov couldn't resist the temptation of adding that sexy anvil to his inventory and fell right into the infamous anvil yard. He survived the fall for a few seconds until the anvil crushed his adventurous skull into adventurous tiny pieces. Flattened, ending 22. 2 days later. Was that a nightmare? It felt pretty real. Pavlov wasn't sure, but he decided to stay away from anvils for a while, just in case. After which time we get to play as this anvil-headed creature, riding up the dark elevator, jumping over the anvil and ignoring it. Help! I'm not feeling well. The dark prison with the princess in wait. Oh no, she's fallen ill. Oh, it opens so damn slowly. I'm sorry for that. It seems the princess was not just guarded by a swinging anvil, but also by a mimic in the shape of her. Pavlov was cut, chewed, digested, and finally turned into a heroic goo. True beauty is inside. Ending 23. 7 months later. Pavlov's spirit reincarnated into the hobo that occupied his house. With this new, smelly body, he was sure he'd get the real princess this time. After which time we get to play as Jesus, the smelly hobo, for some peculiar reason that is largely unexplained. Jumping up on the boulder, over to the side, we can't quite make that particular jump. We're just unable to glide our way across. Instead, we can use the unexploded boulder as a stepping stone, granting us access to this hidden area up above, into the risky cliff. The High Passage, which as you progress further, gets quite mystical and exciting as we enter the mossy cave. An area we've been to before, but now we have access to this button, which will extend the bridge for us, allowing us to access a higher part of the Great Waterfall. A power without limits is sealed at the top of this temple, away from the Dark Lord's reach. As we begin to climb the waterfall top, off to the left is an alternate way of accessing the sacrificial altar. Continuing on to the left pops us out on Macro Mountain. Climbing up the mountain and accessing from this direction is the other way to find the altar. With our added jumping prowess, we can now begin to scale the full mountain, at which point we can actually reach the strawberry. You really have to love strawberries to climb a mountain for one. Jesus broke a leg on the way back, but the strawberry was totally worth it. Strawberries. Ending 24. A floating strawberry at the top of the mountain is a reference to the indie hit Celeste. 2 weeks later. Jesus was lost in Macro Mountain. What was wrong with that place? His distant cousin decided to go there to see if he could find him, which is when we can start playing as Lump. Now, you don't have to have been playing as Jesus to now access Lump. Any character will then unlock the cousin Lump. We can even see our dead body on the other side of the cliff holding a rotten strawberry. Now, knowing that we can never collect the strawberry and pass it along, we can kill Miguel. Green Boy palette unlocked, which when activated will be the green style color palette of the original Game Boy. I broke my leg, but I achieved my dream. Please, let me rest in this place with my strawberries. Signed, your cousin. Well, I hope you enjoy them, buddy. If you're feeling extra sadistic or just hate illumination, you can choose to repeatedly stab a minion. Romaninoff really went berserk on that minion. He kept stabbing it for days until it became a pond of purple goo. Why, Hermaninoff? Where does such immense hate for such an adorable creature come from? Bully. Ending 25. 3 weeks later. Hermaninoff returned home after fulfilling his random revenge against that minion. Time to get back to adventure. There are a few other quick couple of things other than endings that I would like to wrap up before I move on to the next batch in the next video. Here we can see that whatever is out on the edge here is starting to be more well formed. Again, we're starting to see that there is now an egg inside of what we now know is a slowly building nest. And we see now that the egg has hatched into a beautiful chick. Presumably other things in the world are changing as well, but it would take multiple playthroughs dedicating your time to different parts of the world to find all of those. There are several things you'll likely find after they've already completed their development cycle. If you interact with the chicken with nothing in hand, then you will get the chicken, which while not increasing your jump height will allow you to glide around. It does, however, still count as a weight in your inventory, limiting your jumping potential. This silver chest here is something that comes up when you've discovered 33% of endings, so I'll talk about that in the next video. We need to first acquire the shovel. Well, it's not the first hero I've seen carrying a shovel for weapon. I guess you can pass. A reference to Shovel Knight. Thank you guys so much for watching. It hopefully won't be too big of a wait for the next video. These do take a little bit of time to make. I'll do my best to make sure that 26 through 50 is available and ready to view pronto. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.